We have the opportunity to really reshape what a market looks like, but there's obviously going to be some, call it established forces that are going to try and prevent this. I'm a trained scientist that doesn't want to do the work for, say, institutes that don't take care of you. I want to make people healthy, not figure out how to sell them another, makeshift temporary management system rather than a cure. But it's an excellent way to understand what health is. Stem cell therapy doesn't function the way that people think. Can a peptide do the work for me instead?
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Raw and Relentless with DePaoli. I have got Daniel on the line, on the pod today. Daniel, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
It's fantastic to be on Raw and Relentless.
Thanks, man. Give a brief introduction about yourself, what you're doing, what you're all about.
I'm a scientist. I'm a cell biologist, ex-athlete, and I didn't like the way the biotech, medicine, all that kind of world was going, so I started my own thing. People get genetics data, people get these big blood tests, and they want someone to connect it together. I'm that guy. And so now the challenge is to let people know, hey, I'm open, right? I exist, and to give them some confidence because, if I have just a very clear, concise, hey, this is what I sell, who do I partner up with? One DNA test, another. Like I've opened myself up where you can bring me any molecular data. I'm a trained scientist that doesn't want to do the work for, say, institutes that don't take care of you. They don't feed you back the effort that you put into it. And so I was challenged. I was told you can't be a scientist unless you model disease. And I ain't about that. I want to make people healthy, not figure out how to sell them another, makeshift temporary management system rather than a cure.
Yeah.
So here I am, and it's been quite the, I guess, isolating, lonely challenge for the last couple of years to really get things off the ground, kicking and running.
Dude, I'm actually really, really excited to have you on and chat with you because I am really interested and passionate about this subject. As someone who's in the fitness business, I think stem cells are the wave of the future. I think I really try and push a lot of my friends, members at the gym that are having issues to look into stem cells because of the possibilities and what you can do with them. And I feel like medicine nowadays, well, not even nowadays, but medicine anymore is all about let's cut them open. And there's a lot of money. I hate to say it, there's a lot of money behind that. And with what stem cells can do in terms of repair, replenish, rejuvenate, all of that, it's man, I'm just like I can't wait to see what we do with stem cells. How did you even get involved in this field?
I was an ex-athlete. Then I helped my brother run his personal training company, and we train. For the most part, high-level athletes. We trained MMA fighters. We trained ski cross. We trained, soccer players, and we'd always obviously have a group of clients that loved our training system. So this was almost 15 years ago, before the CrossFit days, where what my brother designed, he designed it a lot with me in mind. I was a water polo athlete. I played for Team Canada when I was a youngster, and it was very functional. Like there's no bench press, right? If you wanted to do push-ups or you wanted to work in your chest, we got you in push-up position. Then we stacked weight. We built this custom jetpack in which then you would stack on the plates. And so I was a monster. I was so strong for my age, and I started young with I had my brother as someone to watch over me. So all the myths like, hey, don't exercise, it's going to stunt your growth. I'm the tallest in my family by a long shot. So this whole notion of health, biology, being a doctor was the goal initially. It's just what I gravitate towards. I like the abstract, like it's very easy for me to think about DNA. I didn't realize that was a skill I had till years later where, people couldn't call it visualize these abstract concepts. So I took that, I guess, a little bit for granted, thinking this is, just a way of the mind. And eventually just simply led me towards this longevity cell biology, right? We say stem cells, but you just use that to get grants. It's just cell biology, right?
Okay.
And the big idea with stem cell biology is really understanding that within our adult system, we have to take care of the adult stem cells we have. So the heart, for example, it doesn't have any reserve pool of stem cells. The intestines, tons. So your intestines are generating 3 to 4 days of regenerating intestinal lining. So maintaining your stem cell niches is the game of longevity. And I don't necessarily think longevity is all that, that wasn't the goal, but it's an excellent way to understand what health is. What better way to be like, well, this isn't going through, call it the life force faster. This is going slower. Hence, this must be a way of life in which results into better outcomes. And when we look at athletes, they're a great example of where they're able to maintain the stem cell niche phenomenally. So the cellular component looks great, but they die younger because the physiology there isn't maintained with the same type of rigor or care, right? What happens is we detrain, and then what happens to an athlete, it's a stroke or a cardiovascular event, takes their life before 80s, right? So 80 is about that mid-range or the average for the life expectancy, but athletes tend to die quite a bit younger.
Wait. So, well, that's holy cow. That just like kind of threw me for a loop. So athletes
High level
die
athletes.
high level. Okay. High level athletes die younger than general population people. And
Yes.
that's because they, like you're saying, they just stop training and then their body doesn't know what to do, or what's the
Yeah.
reasoning?
So there's a skewing of about 40%. So when we think that's still a large amount for the athletes, obviously some will make it into their 90s, but you take example, a lot of the big name ones within, what was the soccer player? It was a Maradona recently, had an aneurysm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So that's a perfect example of really when you look at cardiovascular events, surgeons, and you talk to them of who they're operating on, there is a skewed proportion where you have men in their 50s, 60s that used to be very high level athletes. And what happens is they stop their athletic career and they might shift to going, from 30 hours a week with their training, competing, doing things to like 2 hours a week and then even less. And then they go and they might live a lifestyle that hasn't done the best in maintaining the physiology. Because it's like if you think about a car chassis, you built up into a Ferrari, you got an insane engine, and then your chassis starts becoming, Honda Civic over the years. But the engine still has the opportunity, the nervous system can still cause an excitation that can have quite the amplitude, but the musculature, the vasculature doesn't support it the same. So this is this notion where when we think about health, when we think about longevity, I break it down into, hey, what's going on in the cells? Did you do the work you needed to do to help remodel the niches in your body, right? Around the liver, around your vasculature, around your intestines, around your brain, your heart. You just do your best to make sure you don't mess that up. Don't take anything that can scar your heart. And then what are you doing on a regular day basis that's making sure you maintain your physiology? Because there is a real, call it tax to be a human being, and that's movement. Like it's not an option. You must move. You're designed as a human being for your veins, your lymphatic system to function based off muscle contraction. So it's a very simple tax. You must contract every single muscle in a day, not like, arbitrary, just go for a walk. That's good. That'll get things going. But the more that you are just in tune with what you are, the better mileage you get. The more content you are with it. And then when it comes time to it, you don't have to go underneath the knife. And even with something like a stem cell therapy, this is where I think the prerequisite before, hey, I should go get some stem cells, is can a peptide do the work for me instead? Because the stem cell therapy doesn't function the way that people think. You get a stem cell injection, those stem cells aren't going and becoming you. They're actually just helping the releasing factors to support your niche to then kickstart it in you. So if you know what factors those injected stem cells are releasing, use those factors, right? This is where the peptides come in. This is this whole new field of understanding that we have the opportunity to really reshape what a market looks like, but there's obviously going to be some, call it established forces that are going to try and prevent this, right? That's why something like these small peptides that are quite regenerative are attempted to be taken off the market because, they're cheap to make, they're easy to distribute, they're highly effective, right? So that's not ideal if you're a multi-million-dollar or billion-dollar company.
Yeah.
I mean, but that to me is obvious. I guess maybe some people are still in a state of disbelief with the field, but
Yeah.
when you're working in it, it makes sense. Like it's
Yeah,
just,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of questions behind some things you just said. One is, um, if obviously you can't, if you were a high level athlete in your 20s, you obviously can't train the same way in your 60s or 70s like you could in your 20s, right? So then how do you prescribe workouts that still can promote that physiology that you're mentioning, where the chassis can still stay a Ferrari chassis and not a Honda Civic?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Here's the big takeaway for the everyday man is that you don't age synchronously, or aging is dysynchronous. And when we think of what we are, we're a bunch of different systems cooperating to give us consciousness. And so let's associate that when I say consciousness, and then ignore, call it the body, because there's obviously this duality mind body idea. So if we think what degrades the fastest, and it's speed.
Yeah.
So the first thing that goes when I stop training is my ability to go speed. But that doesn't mean I stopped the ability to send chemical signals to dilate my vessels, to maintain my blood viscosity, or for the musculature on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I go for years without doing, let's say, my max deadlift, and then I start coming back, and it's okay, maybe I train for a week or two, and then I start going back and I love doing that max deadlift, and now I'm 60. You got to be very careful with that. And so
Yeah.
really, there was a pivotal moment when I was a young trainer where someone had a stroke in front of me,
Mm.
and oh man, I felt awful. Like I felt responsible. Like I made this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, my client was a stud. He was fantastic. Obviously, he said, "Hey, there's nothing on you." Obviously this is on my end. I signed up for this, but that still didn't feel like I messed up.
Mm-hmm.
Like how come I didn't know more?
Mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to be the smart guy in the room. Why didn't I? And it really pushed me to try and understand: is there something we can know deeper? Is there a blood test I could have given him? And the answer is yeah. Yeah, if I told him, hey, go buy $1,000 blood test, we could have had early warning signs that his blood viscosity, his clotting system, his vasculature could use more support. And
Interesting.
so this type of, call it getting a blood test when you're not sick, this preventative, proactive type of approach is really going to be, it's the end all be all for, call it the next generation of individuals, because
Mm-hmm.
once you get to a clear metabolic problem or a problem that requires surgery, you're at the whim of who's the professional in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And the quality of individuals that are practicing is not the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you might get somebody that is the 1 in 20, is the absolute saint and master skillful, call it physician, but you might not. And so don't chance it. Like you can easily prevent yourself from being on that operating table or within those, call it metabolic disasters, just by very, very much so respecting what your body is already communicating to your to your forefront, and then knowing a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Knowing that, hey, you have a nervous system, hey, you have the musculature, then you have this fascial or connective tissue. Now, I'm particularly interested in fascia connective tissue because it's a bit of the secret of regeneration and longevity. But it's also a very dirty word, because if you just want to hide a lot of information, you just say connective tissue,
Mm.
right? Oh, yeah, it's in the connective tissue. Like, what are you talking about? We're talking about collagen network. We're talking about, immune system. We're talking about your spleen. Like, you can go anywhere. So, a big part is like, hey, I stopped for a long time. Easy does it. Like I know coaches and trainers, hey, I want to see results. No, easy does it. Because you have to come back to a state where the ability for your nervous system to send a signal, your musculature to respond to it, your joints to be able to deal with that force, really slow and steady. And this is really why some individuals can make it to 93 and 100 and they look fantastic still. They're not decrepit, taking God knows how many things. It's just they have a routine that does this for them.
Mm.
They're not. There's no point to prove. There isn't these massive shifts, and they're in a constant state of, call it, not necessarily learning, but putting themselves in challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're tasked to be able to adapt to what's in front of them, and that's some of the best, call it, knowledge to share. Where, in a very simple sense, the more complex your movements, the better off you are. The more you're protected you'll be when you try and do something like some kind of performance outcome, right?
Mm.
Neuromotor complexity is the buzzword there.
Mm. You mentioned a few minutes ago that the intestines have the highest number of stem cells that replenish.
It's one of the faster organs that turns over. Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, there's over the last several years, it's been trendy to talk about leaky gut.
Hmm.
So if the intestines have, one of the fastest replenish rates, why would leaky gut even exist then?
Yeah, that's a great point. So, how fast can we heal leaky gut would be another way to try and look at it. So, if
Mm.
someone has leaky gut, how quickly can you switch it back to non-leaky gut? Can you do it within a week? And so that kind of tells you is that how quick is the turnover of cells there. So we have a lining, and then underneath that lining you have vasculature and collagen and immune system, and it's called the lamina propria. So
Mm-hmm.
there's the lining, but then there's this relatively stable structure that pulls in all the nutrients, the blood supply,
Mm-hmm.
and the hydrating portion, which deals with the barrier for, hey, here's bacteria, here's my internal state. So it's
Mm-hmm.
loaded with immune system, it's loaded with connective tissue, it's loaded with blood supply. So if there's leaky gut, that's really what we're talking about in terms of that needs to have a little bit of attention, help, healing, remodeling. The lining itself, if that's perforated, well, even though you produce new cells there, it'll still have a perforation in there. Maybe
Gotcha.
that's because, and here's a very obvious one, you simply have stool that's hardened and stuck. And so even though you attempt to regenerate, that stool isn't dislodging very easily. And
Mm.
so it might be stuck to actual collagen portions underneath the lining. Now you have constant. So what do you have to do? You have to move that hard stuck stool and detach it from the juicy lamina propria, so
Mm.
that it isn't causing this constant inflammatory response. That constant, like, inflammation's it's a buzzword, but it's a process
Yeah.
in a bigger process. And so
Right.
what's the bigger process? Inflammation doesn't just happen, hey, for no reason. It's not the bad guy. It's not like a bad process. It's pivotal to regeneration.
Mm-hmm.
Regeneration is the overarching process. In all instances of inflammation, your body's trying to heal or deal with something. And so when it's interrupted and you're kept at a constant state, that constant state of inflammation tells you that I'm not finishing the regenerative response.
Mm-hmm.
Either I am continuously sending the signal, either there's some kind of obstruction or problem, which is, heavy metal, microorganismal, some kind of chemical, or you're probably not standing in front of just getting irradiated, but those are the sort of things that can start damaging your system to say, hey, help, we need to repair this site or this area. And so, the notion of leaky gut is huge for our population because we consume a lot of things that do a few
Yeah.
numbers. One,
Yep.
they paralyze our gut, meaning the actual mechanism, the peristalsis, the squishing becomes so sluggish and slow because of these substances that, one, slow the passage of food, but actually interact to freeze our gut. So people will notice if they have coffee, all of a sudden, like, oh, I got to go,
Yeah.
right? Because that stimulates the enteric nervous system. You're actually interacting, same way you interact with the nervous system, up here, you're going to interact with the nervous system down there. There's other things too that help facilitate that. One, in which people don't like to talk about, is nicotine. But nicotine is phenomenal way to activate and interact with your enteric nervous system, so it actually gets your gut moving and going.
Really?
It's yeah. And so remember, separate the word nicotine from smoking. I know
Yep.
people, you say nicotine, they think you're smoking cigarettes. No, we do science here, right?
Yeah.
We have to take everything with context, because when we speak in these call it cultural words that carry weight,
Yep.
we're losing a lot of meaning, right? That's
Yeah.
not the systematic approach, right? We're failing to be good with science, even though people think that, no, I'm very scientific. context specific. So nicotine itself is a very beneficial molecule for one, for
Mm.
your brain.
Yep.
It has quite a positive effect for you to be able to make new synapses and call it have cognitive function for long periods of time. And then the other aspect is we're just seeing that it has so many different physiological benefits. For one is for colitis, and obviously
Mm.
knowing how to use it is not just, hey, I'm slapping on nicotine and not changing anything else. You're going to use that in conjunction to be able to get the right, call it, push in the right direction.
Yeah, I've read a lot and heard a lot about like nicotine gum being super popular nowadays for the mental stimulation because of how it affects the brain. But this is the first I've heard that actually helps promote on the gut side too. That's fascinating. Um, is there certain, like, in your opinion, what are some of the foods that might paralyze the gut, as you were saying?
Yeah, so guar gum, for example, is like a good additive that's in a lot of substances that slows the passage of food.
Mm.
Now, if you're having issues with maintaining food in your system and it's passing through so quickly with diarrhea and whatnot, there's no issue with having some guar gum. But when you're already backed up and you're constantly having slow movement of it, that's just causing the stool to sit in your intestines longer than it needs to. And so that's just a tiny one amongst, I would say, a whole sweep of chemicals that we ingest that start doing this process to really slow it down. One other one that people love, but you can see when you cut open cadavers and you look at the actual intestine, is that it has a thing called rugage, like these little bumps.
Hmm.
And you can kind of get things hidden and stuck in there, and you'll just see cheese.
What?
God knows how long that cheese has been sitting in there because it got pushed into the rugae and then covered over with a stool formation, bacterial formation, and it's hardened. So now you have this very hardened, sticky component that's within the intestine. And so
Daniel, you just ruined my day. I love cheese.
I'm not saying you can't have cheese. I'm just saying what are some of the foods, right? And
Yeah.
and for who and what. And this
Mm.
is a thing where you deciding to eat this very complex meal of nachos, which have a million things on there, and whole, sauces and all these other things.
Hmm.
We don't necessarily, the digestive system likes to see things that way.
Mm.
There's gonna be a big difference between someone that's has this once in a while versus someone that's eating this constantly. It's always context specific, but where your gut's at.
Mm.
Now, if people are familiar with what they look like, they kind of look like an upside down U in our stomach or in our abdomen, right? So
Hmm.
if you start the right side, the large intestine goes up, across, down, and then out through the anus. And so that up portion, what happens is it can become very distended. And so I have, a surgeon who, he's an anesthesiologist, and he'll go in with a little endoscope to check for fertility, for example, for women and for other procedures. And the amount of times he sees just that the colon is absolutely full, red and inflamed on one side, he says it's baffling. It's like,
Wow.
this person doesn't even know that they have an issue with constipation because they're going regularly, but they're not actually moving the contents through because they eat in the morning, they eat in the day, they eat at night, and people are convinced they can't get by if they don't have food 3 times a day. Now, in reality, that's massive weakness, right? We talk about, hey, you being strong mentally, you being strong physically. That's a massive weakness. Like, imagine me and you have to go fishing, and we're gonna go backcountry. We're gonna go enjoy, and every hour or so, yo, you can hold up, but man, I gotta eat. You're like, come,
Hmm.
come on, buddy.
Hmm. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
got we got miles to go and trek. What are you doing here? And I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be some hotshot health guy. So if you switch the idea of, it's like, well, no, I can easily go 12 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours. I don't lose any weight. I'm not in like some kind of mental breakdown if I don't have food. That's the reality of how you should function as a human being.
Really?
Absolutely. So even if you think as like the gym bro, and I'm trying to gain muscle,
Yep.
okay, well, you can gain muscle eating every other day, even though you train every day. So if that's the case, this like idea, like, oh, I have to get my protein in right away after the gym, like, sure, if you're trying to min max, do these type of things, but there might be consequences. Now, someone, for example, eats every other day, they train regularly, they're very consistent, man, their fibers are resilient. They don't degrade very easily. They can take a break for months without losing a lot of, call it, fitness and gains. And so to revisualize, to think of your system as extremely adaptive to what you're doing, and then trying to get to a point where you are seeing yourself as more and more resilient, not just in, hey, can I lift more weight, but think army wise. Like if we had a bunch of backpacks, we had to go, 10 days straight, every day we're doing 20 miles. Like the big, super muscly fit guy isn't the resilience that's going to help get us, to the end result. It's going to be someone that can stabilize their body temperature. So they're not sweating constantly, losing insane amount of electrolytes and hydration. So all of a sudden, this idea of thermostability is the resilience we're looking for.
So
to see, yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
just to reimagine a little bit of when we think, hey, I'm strong, what does that actually look like physiologically when speaking? And is there ways that we can get an idea of, oh, I can, for example, fall off a little platform that my coach is going to press. How quick am I responsive to be able to launch myself off? Now, obviously, you do that with high-level prepared individuals, but that's a type of, call it like stressors, that takes someone from being, call it a civilian and start adapting him into that, the superhuman, the ubermesh that was once talked about.
So let me push back on that a little
Yeah.
bit. In my experience, the people that I've worked with, the people that I train with, whatever you want to call it, I have found that the people that are, one, not intaking enough calories, not intaking enough protein, are the ones that are getting injured more, and they are not recovering as fast. Whereas the person that intakes enough calories based on their expenditure, intakes enough protein, usually I try and push for at least 0.8, ideally 1 gram per pound of body weight. Those are the ones that are the most resilient, stay injured less often, and have recover faster. I'll use myself as an example, right? I tore my pec last year, fluke thing, right? But I finally decided to have surgery in January. The doctor said, you're going to be out for a year. I was like, fuck no, I'm not. So I wanted to prove wrong, but I'm the type of person where I'm eating, for maybe 5 times a day. I'm taking in, at least 1 gram per pound of body weight. I was back in the gym on the mats in 4 months. In my opinion, I think that if I had not, number one, ate right, and number two, started movement right away and not reduced movement, I would not have been able to recover as fast. But what you're saying, it goes against everything I've ever been taught. So I would love to hear your opinion on
Yeah.
that.
No, not quite. I think what you said is absolutely in line here with what I'm attempting to communicate. I might be jumping in terms of complexity a little bit too fast and not doing the build up. But if a person eats every other day and they're eating less than what energy they're expending, they're going to start having to give it from someplace.
Okay.
And it'll go from, glycogen to fat to muscle eventually. So the notion is, for example, if you're familiar with, what are they called? The professional food eaters.
Yeah.
Right? So in one sitting, they might eat 8,000 to 10,000 calories.
Yep.
They can still stay shredded. One of my favorite ones is Beard Meats Food. And so on the day that he has his 10,000 calories, okay, across 7 days, that means he'll just lower his caloric intake in those other days. And he stays in that set point. So if you're eating every other day, and again, we have individuals that showed this. They said, hey, I'll gain muscle, I'll gain weight eating every other day. So the first part is the hormonal aspect, where if I eat, at 10 o'clock on a regular day basis, before it becomes 10 o'clock, my body is already trying to send a signal or expecting that I'm going to eat, because there is a habituation that occurs hormonally. If now all of a sudden I say, hey, there's no food, it might be a very easy response for me to deal with. But if I've, been very active to eat all the time, a craving is going to come. So this idea of the hormones can control our ability to be able to say, digest food, send signals for whatnot. But we've become very efficient so that, hey, on the second day when it's my feeding day, I might still only need to eat in 2 meals, but I'm going to have a massive amount of calories. And the trick there is to help ease the digestion as best you can, and that your sequence of eating is as scientific as he possibly can be, right? So what
Sure.
do I mean by that? Hey, I ingest fat. I don't want cold water. I want anything warm because fat's going to geosolidify. You can't emulsify it. That's going to cause problems with absorption, yada, yada. So what you said is absolutely fact. If someone is not having enough protein in the diet, and what is actually a caveat to that is if they're eating low quality foods, that actually is going to detract from their ability. So even if
Yep.
they're eating enough protein, the low quality foods are going to cause issues with digestion. They're going to cause the inflammatory process in areas where they're just now wasting resources. And what that's going to result into them is more injury, more slower progression towards whatever their goal is. And it's never a good idea for you to hear something like this from me and they'd be like, yeah, tomorrow I'm now going to start this whole entire new regime. We like slow adaptation. Biology likes a slow signal to start switching to something else. Anything drastic, you need intelligent, call it guidance, in order to be able to get there.
Yeah.
And so this goes, I think, in line with, what your experience is that you might have not had an individual that, for example, is like, a 1 meal a day bodybuilder. They exist, and they exist in all different flavors of what they're choosing to eat. They still have to eat a substantial amount.
Yes.
And it's very challenging. Like, again, the nutritional side is challenging because of our, genetic backgrounds. We might not all be the best at digesting all the same things, right?
Yeah.
Lentils, rice, potato, like God knows, like, you can't just call something a starch and then leave it at that.
Yeah.
There's a different way that we have response to it. And if I'm having challenges digesting something, but I'm being told that's healthy, I don't have that connection with my body, it's going to cause me problems with injury, with slow performance, it's in sleep, in other ways. So hopefully that kind of rounds it out. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes complete sense because you literally, you said what one of my old nutrition coaches told me like way back in the day is it's the time value of calories. It's the amount of calories over time that you want to be looking at, not what you're ingesting, daily, right?
Yeah.
You nailed it. Yeah. I'm glad we're on the same page when we clarified
and I'll
on that.
throw one more caveat in here. A big one is that, let's say I have a massive day today. Let's say all of a sudden, like, okay, I'm going to choose to go take my dog. We're going to swim for 4 kilometers in, ice cold water, even though it's not that cold right now. And you would think, okay, I'll be super hungry right now, right after. Yes, appetite will be stimulated, right? My body's resources will go into very much so interconversion, and I'll release it into the blood. But the actual refeeding time that will be a massive trigger will be the next day. You will see how the next day you're like, I am hungry, give me an insane amount of food.
Yeah.
Because you've allowed your system time to recover. And the signal that really is call it the big signal, is that as your blood is starting to lose the resources, so things are taking amino acids, things are taking fatty acids, things are taking, when I say things, all your tissues are hungry.
Yeah.
Your blood all of a sudden says, oh my goodness, yeah, let's get more food in there. I don't have time in the liver to interconvert all this. Plus, it looks like we want to have more energy expenditure. Go eat. And that's the most important time to refeed. And what you refeed in that meal is very important, because this is the idea then of setting your metabolism, right? Like we choose where our metabolism goes based off of activity and the foods that we're putting into it, and when we put what food. So the idea of breakfast, like apart from what time you eat, doesn't matter. You want to eat at 6, want to eat at 10, want to eat at 4 afternoon. The important part about it is that the first item that now breaks fasted state is going to set the metabolism for the rest of the day. It might dictate it for 4 to 6 to 8 to 18 hours. And that first meal is very important. I shifted, from my early days to be like, yeah, you need a lot of nutrition, get your eggs and things like that, to realizing that the most important thing for you to have phenomenal health is for the first thing to help clean out and remove stuff from your liver into your colon and get it out of your system. As you help the daily detox, very simple things like, lemon, a green apple, even an avocado for whatever weird reason, those type of items help move contents out of the system, right? Like a weird one would be like arugula, dandelion greens, anything that can help bind stuff and remove it from the liver, because it was cleaning the entire night. If you stopped eating at around 7, 8 and give your liver time to prep, it's going to start doing blood cleaning. And this is really my my center point of how I work around whether you're combating disease or want to become, supernatural in terms of, hey, I want to have long health in today's modern,
Mm-hmm.
call it gong show. We just look at the blood. The blood is our way of saying, hey, when your blood's clean, you're resilient. You can
Mm-hmm.
take on and abuse, challenge yourself further than what you were able to before. And so we've, myself included, from individuals who used to get sick yearly to not being sick, like 6 years running. Why?
Interesting.
Because there's this first understanding, okay, I got to clean my blood, then I'll put the nutrients in. This notion that we're so starved of all these nutrients is a bit of a catch-22. It's rather that we're constantly being tested with what foods we're eating and whether they're actually beneficial for us or are they acting like a tax. And
Mm.
if you eat constant stuff, like, for example, buns that have 14 to 16 ingredients in a bun, it should have
Mm-hmm.
yeast, water, flour, salt, right? But they
Yep.
got 14 ingredients. You have to expend things like your omega-3s, not to build your brain, to build your heart, to build your muscles, but you have to expend your omega-3s as anti-inflammatory markers to deal with that substance that you've eaten. So instead of using it to build your body, you're using it to defend yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
this is where this notion of what am I eating for? Is it for pleasure, which is fine. You can do that. But if you're only ever eating for pleasure, that's a psychological condition.
Mm-hmm.
You got bamboozled, or there's more like deep-seated issues. Maybe you got to connect with the right people. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe your environment's in the wrong, in the shitter. That sounds like more of like a person's in a state of depression if they can't get away from, like I got to eat the sugary bullshit constantly.
Yeah. So are you saying, kind of going back to cleaning out the colon and whatnot, is that where what you just mentioned, like the dandelion greens, the lemon, the green apple, will help remove all of that stool and cheese, if you will, in the U shapes?
Yeah, well, two parts. So those that I just mentioned, remember when the liver did the whole detox, it's still in the liver. It would like to now get it out into the colon. And so
Mm-hmm.
something like lemon, like you having, for example, lemon water as one of the first things that is your stomach seeing, technically it's non-caloric, so it's not going to break, call it the fasted state.
Gotcha.
You won't get cases. But what it does is it gives you molecules that help carry out stuff from the liver into the colon. So the liver is now freed and it can do the nutrient processing. The things like the green apple, it has some calories, so it's going to stop the fasted state,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a special, call it, has special things in there which allows the liver to release contents. So even though there's a slight amount of, hey, you're going to start a little bit of carbohydrate metabolism, it's in a very context specific way. This is why knowing just like some general, call it like biochemical pathways, can be quite of a disservice for you, where it is very context specific. This
Mm-hmm.
is why there is the plethora and the diversity of food that exists. They all have a certain way in which interact with our system. Just calling it blanket protein or blanket fat, you're going to lose out, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
would say fat doesn't really belong as a macronutrient because it's so complex.
Yeah.
What hold your brain? What is it? It's fat,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're not using that fat for energy. You have to build up the composite. Take a look at your muscle. Your muscle's got like sacks and sacks, and those sacks that hold calcium so you can actually, contract your muscles. It's fat.
Mm.
And then if the fat that you use to build that muscle is not good, let's say like high amounts of trans fat have entered into the wall,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have terrible muscle contraction. You're going to get
Mm.
terrible problems. You have to remodel it. You want to put in the 3s, the 6, the 9s to help reinforce the fat.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's just, call it like cell membrane composition. In terms of signaling and brain and other aspects of what it's doing, becomes very complicated. And for a kicker, I'll just throw this in at least I find it interesting. The heart loves fat. So
Mm-hmm.
your muscle and your liver, as you engage and you start doing exercise, it'll change and put very specific long strands of fat into your blood to feed your heart.
Mm.
Because your heart doesn't get new cells. It'll have the same cells in which it has to repair for the rest of your life. And what does it love? It loves these long strands of fat that you produce.
Mm-hmm.
What is it not like? High amounts of sugar constantly.
Mm-hmm.
It's an oxidative organ. It likes oxygen and it likes the fat residues present there. When you have such high amounts of sugar that you're constantly bombarding your system with, drinking Gatorades and you're doing a marathon, you're doing all the gels,
Yep.
your system isn't able to produce those long chain fats, the acylcarnitines, so that the heart can take it in, remodel, repair. cause a lot of issues with pressure, and anyways, yada yada. But the bioenergetics are very interesting, right? This is where the context specific is huge. Each individual comes with their own set metabolism in which you have to address, hey, where are we going from here? What do you want to adapt to?
Yeah. Man, I love this stuff. I can talk to you for hours about it. Do you have a hard stop or can we keep going?
I don't have a hard stop. Yeah.
Great.
I mean, if you'd like to, I'm having a blast.
Great. Okay. So, do you think that's why, because I've been reading lately that colon cancer is way up on the rise. Do you think a lot of that is attributed to these situations, diet, inflammation of the gut, the U shapes being clogged, if you will?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely. So there's a weird friend. He's a bit of a jokester. He's a doctor, and he no longer practices. So during a cancer a summit, during the lung cancer portion, he said, "Oh, smoking and smoke in your lungs doesn't cause lung cancer. It doesn't matter about the smoke in the lungs." And all the other ones kind of like, "Oh, what is this guy doing? He's trolling." And during the colon portion, where they're talking about everything except the food that you're eating is the problem for colon cancer. He's like, "Oh, the stuff you're putting in your colon is causing colon cancer," and they all, they're like, "Oh, this guy again."
Yeah.
So, he's a very smart man, because what you're putting in your colon is absolutely the massive driver of your metabolism, and cancer is a metabolic disease. So your metabolism is going skewed. And if you're putting things, because the colon is called the front line of where you're interacting with the outside world, if along the lines you've already skewed your metabolism and you're now ingesting things in which are just hard for your system to deal with, they strip you of, they're oxidizing agents, they're carcinogens, right? When you say carcinogen, what does that mean? So you're putting in agents that's just simply taking away your biology. And eventually the cell's metabolism shifts to a point where it becomes cancerous. And the notion that we're eating constantly, here, a very simple idea, kind of like a big thing for people to take and run with, is that cancer is a disease of growth. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
If it's not growing, it's not cancer.
Yep.
So you might say it's a marker, but if it's not growing, okay, it was maybe tumor or something. So if it's growing, what is the biggest growth signal we send on a regular day basis to our body?
Insulin.
Genius. Absolutely. So every time you eat, if you're especially eating with food, even if it's a low glycemic food, you still have to have an insulin response. So again, if your insulin response is 4 to 5 to 6, 7 times a day, that doesn't bode well with this idea that you're constantly telling your cells grow. And what's the opposite of grow is that we can think of the system as that, hey, I'm ingesting food, take the outside world and convert it into me. I eat a mango, I become Daniel. You eat a mango, it becomes Bo. We have the intelligence to interconvert. And the opposite, when I say, okay, no more food, it is defend myself and redistribute what I have here, reallocate it where I need to. And this portion of defend and reallocate is uncomfortable when we mess up our hormonal system. We act on our hormones as if they're trying to guide us, but we've been hijacked from a very young, early age through what's present within our foodstuffs. So if you take a look, like maltodextrin is this weird sugary compound that'll be present in tons of places. It has a massive insulin response, massive metabolic consequence, but you don't metabolize it, call it for the calories. So they put it in things saying it's like, oh, no sugar added. It's like, oh, but this thing's wreaking havoc on my metabolism. It's shifting it and causing it to respond in ways in which it's going to gear me towards, hey, the signature of cancer. So the research is turning, right? People are talking, having different conversations, recognizing the positive effects that keto diet has on cancer.
Yep.
And I as a scientist really don't like diets, because you can say keto diet, I still don't know what you're eating. Are you eating only bacon? Are you eating only cheese? Is it only eggs?
Yeah.
We still need to get at the actual, what are you ingesting, right? So anytime, I say that with a bit of a caution. It's not that I'm against the keto diet or any diet in general, is that I like more information than less.
Sure.
In order to be able to make, call it, the connections that I know, so that we can work from there. And so, the evidence is quite there now, piling up, where when you allow your body to produce ketones, that means a lot. It's not about the ketones per se, but it's about what metabolism you have shifted in. You can think of it as like this entire, you know, orchestra, or, you know, different, you know, a circuit board that's gets to light up. And because of that, there's a specific use of your metabolism, the substrates that would push towards cancer don't. They say, hey, we got to redistribute, we got to chew up, we got to do this protective process. And the other portion where the ketones are very interesting is they tend to act in a signaling manner. So when you have high amounts of beta hydroxybutyrate, which is one of the ketones,
Yep.
it tells the brain, turn on membrane protecting programming. It tells the genome to say, turn on the genes to protect yourself. So it becomes neuroprotective. When you look at the heart, what does it tell the heart to do? Turn on the genes to become cardioprotective. But what do you need once the genes are turned on? Well, you actually need the substrate to be present. So if you're producing ketones, you know you're in a state in which you're also able to release fat into your system, transform the fat membrane into the short, medium, and long chains. So now that the heart got the beta hydroxybutyrate to signal, hey, turn on cardioprotective genes, also simultaneously you have what's present in the blood so that the heart can actually take it up.
So I want to hold on. I want to pause real quick on that, because when you say fat in the bloodstream, are you talking about fat stored muscularly or in the organs, or visceral fat?
So it'll be released. Fat will be released into the bloodstream from adipose, from white fat.
Okay.
Your liver and your muscle are going to interact with that fat, and they're going to re-release it back into the blood. And there's a little bit of a complicated event happening where they will take different sized lengths of fat. So we'll link them up in something like small, medium, and large. The heart tends to love large. It's not exclusive like that. It's a lot more complicated. That's my hand-waving, easy explanation. Because what I see in my end is I see a panel of 30 to 40, what I would say they're called acylcarnitines, and of different lengths. So it's a way I attach this molecule called an acylcarnitine to help transport fat molecules around. The question is, who's taking them up? Why is my liver releasing them? Why is my muscle releasing them?
Right.
So this is why I say fat signaling doesn't belong as a macronutrient, because yes, the heart might take it up to burn it up, but it also might take it up to do something very different.
But do you have to be in a caloric deficit in order for the fat to be released into the liver, into the bloodstream?
No, not at all. Remember, if you simply don't have a high insulin meal, your fat will be released into the bloodstream. Now, if you're an athlete, like if you're very active, even though if you have a high insulin meal, you'll very quickly re-release fat into the bloodstream. It depends on the type of athlete, but like, you know, a rugby player, a soccer player, this is why they look like the way they look like. They're extremely quick to be able to shift that metabolism.
Yeah.
Their metabolic flexibility is phenomenal.
Right.
Whereas people that are not as active, it is quite a problem. It will inhibit fat. So in a very, call it ecological sense, hey, fruit is plentiful, you know, eat the fruit, don't touch the fat.
Yeah.
We're going to store the fat for the off season. Hey, there's no fruit present. All right, get the fat into play. But when you're within such high energy demands, your hormones and your ability to tap into it, it reshifts. However, what I've seen, for example, with athletes, especially young athletes that like to drink soda,
Yeah.
it will wreck their metabolism. So that there's something very sinister about the high fructose corn syrup, where it acts like a fat inhibitor, so a lipolysis inhibitor. And you can have things like that, right? This is the complicated aspect of biology, is that in each of these enzymatic pathways, you can throw an inhibitor or activator, right? And so for some individuals, like, well, this doesn't work for me. That can't be the case. Yeah, you have to take a look, because this is always sort of the game of when you have things that, you know, a tea, a drink, an energy drink, some kind of bullshit that someone's taken. I say bullshit because, you know, it's hard for us to gauge and assess. You know, it might act in a very particular manner for the individual. Maybe they have a very low concentration of an enzyme. Maybe they have very high concentration of enzyme. And their system might adapt to be able to hold that within a particular range. So this is the, you know, we all have the same genes in terms of biomachinery. We have insulin, we have growth factors, but the way in which we adapt to our particular circumstances, the way we've grown up, is a big deal, you know. And there's ways we can emulate and follow good training principles, but you must have that biofeedback to make it your own, to know where the right time is to push,
Yeah.
and when the right time is like, oh, I'm on borderline an injury. I need to reestablish, reassess, build myself up, protect myself before I can, put the best foot forward.
There are probably a shitload of nutrition coaches, online nutrition coaches right now that are screaming at their phone because you said that high fructose corn syrup is doing what to the body it does, because so many of them say, based on the research, there's literally no difference between high fructose corn syrup and having, call it a potato, because it forms glucose and it's metabolized the same way in the body. But I would love your opinion on that, but I could tell you from personal experience, I think there is a vastly different outcome between eating a potato and having a soda with high fructose corn syrup, because I can see it on people's body composition.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, you just have to punch in the right words. You'll get to the research eventually. If you have someone that can do a test, you can, for example, try and look at the structure of high fructose corn syrup.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why it's not published and available. Is it just a fructose molecule? It isn't.
Mm-hmm.
How big is the molecule? You can do that through an NMR. So if anyone's really interested, you can simply go pay, get those results, and see for yourself. In terms of personal experience, not even the publications, individuals I've worked with, I see that once they shift their, call it, consumption, once we take away the high fructose corn syrup, even if we add and keep the Gatorades and other stuff in, their access to their fat over long term drastically changes. And then we can do the heavy duty blood test to back that up with, I have only for a few individuals. Now, people like to throw the word anecdotal out, right, as if that means something.
Yes.
So
yes,
the word anecdotal refers to, your observation without the scientific rigor.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what you start with, an observation, right?
Yeah.
And so in exercise physiology, so I would say one of the best sciences that has taught us about health, right? You put people through a challenge. They're the healthiest people on the planet, the most resilient,
Mm-hmm.
Military style training too, heat stress. And we pull their blood, and we do it with one person over multiple time points. One person over multiple time points is a lot more insightful and higher quality than lots of people on a time point, lots of people on a time point.
Mm-hmm.
You might just see a scatter plot, but with an individual, you will see the delta a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Is that delta going to be the same for everyone? No, but once you keep running people through, if 9 out of 10 people have the same direction, you know that there's some type of follow-up there that's a lot more meaningful, that might be masked with large population studies.
Yeah.
And we're in an era where we've done enough biology to know the general trends of things, and we've excluded outliers, but now it's time to address the fact the outlier is a real person. What's going on there? That biology exists.
Mm-hmm.
Why does it exist? What's going on? What do we learn from it? And what do we do about it?
Yeah.
Right. So this is the the route I've taken. Is I'm now the guy that does the N of one approach.
Yeah.
Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Is there ways to get confidence? Yes. You can use testing to have confidence, to know, hey, am I in ketosis?
Mm-hmm.
How long does it take me to get into ketosis? Hey, is my blood sugar coming down after an extreme bout of a marathon, or is my blood sugar actually relatively stable? What is it the next day? So you can go about using that information to understand where your biological pathways are, instead of sitting siloed, reading a paper, never observing or using yourself as the evidence.
Yeah.
You're the evidence.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Right? So that's the obvious, I think, I would say elephant in the room is, like not addressing what you see, what you're experiencing, what you're living, and going through what someone has curated. Like, I've had to put graphs together. I had to put stuff to the side in order just to get anything meaningful to say, which isn't easy.
Mm-hmm.
But know that I had to push stuff to the side, saying, I'm not dealing with this yet. We'll deal with it later. This is what we got in front. Let's address this first. So in terms of health, we have some of the big, call it, players that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the bioenergetics, we know how it functions to a massive extent. Is our model perfect of explaining it all? Like, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But obviously there's circumstances where somebody fasts and all of a sudden they start losing large amounts of muscle. That is a very rare case.
Mm.
But that tells you, okay, this person is actually in critical state. They're obviously burning through their muscle because their body would like the amino acids for another pathway. What pathway is asking for it? So you don't know until you kind of look at that person, look at that circumstance, and to think that you're going to be that person. Well, I mean, I'm not sure why people are in this fear state. They're like, oh, I don't want to lose my muscle.
Yeah.
You won't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I love what you're saying too, because it seems so logical too, because there has been so much talk, literature, hype around either intermittent fasting or fasting in general, 24, 36, 48-hour fasts, because of the autophagy that it does in your body's cells. I know the carnivore diet has gotten extremely popular. Anecdotally, you have heard or seen people that go on carnivore and are able to cure ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, even cancer, not curing cancer, but it slows cancer growth, even neurological diseases like Alzheimer's, dementia. There's even studies like Alzheimer's, dementia. They're being slowed because of the carnivore. And he is strictly carnivore, and he has cured so many of his health ailments by eliminating so much out of his diet. Because exactly what you're saying is you're promoting the body's best pathways, and you're eliminating all the garbage that you've been ingesting um, throughout the years. And I think there's, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, but people will say, well, what about your vegetables? Well, our vegetables nowadays are GMO'd and sprayed with glyphosate. They're not the same vegetables that they were 50 years ago. And to your point, in the last 20 years, we are nutritionally, educationally way better off than we were before, right? Now and today compared to 20 years ago is what I meant to say. But yeah, I mean, do you see the same thing with the fasting, the carnivore diet, all of that stuff?
I love it. Like I appreciate your simple, call it like scientific prowess, where at this point in time, people that are extremely trained aren't able to do what you do. Hey, look, there's a population. They're doing something,
Yeah.
and they have results.
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
What can we gain from this? And it's not an easy, call it, understanding of what's going on with the carnivore diet, because when I open up my hepatology textbook, my liver textbook, when we talk about detoxification and cleaning, the majority of it is with understanding with plant compounds that help facilitate this process. No one at that point in time, when they made these textbooks, published with like, well, we're only going to provide protein, which is eventually going to turn to amino acids, and you're going to keep flushing the liver with amino acids. So when you do this, obviously within live context, it's not one individual that did it. We have thousands. I'm actually in the carnivore Twitter group, just so that I can see and learn from these individuals. And I've worked with numerous people with carnivore, and you are correct. They have gone from psychiatric conditions on medication to now not using them.
Fascinating.
And so it's very easy to jump on the bandwagon like, oh, plants are bad for you, you're not supposed to eat plants. Absolutely not. You're again, this is the very simple answer, because, and for the majority of history, we have been eating plants, and it hasn't resulted in these problems. Our food supply is tainted. You mentioned one compound that's sprayed on it, glyphosate. There's a lot more than just glyphosate. Refortifying foods. Like who said this was a good idea?
Yes.
So we're in a state where and it's complicated, because you can spray glyphosate on broccoli, and it doesn't actually go into the, if you do the lab test where I look, hey, is there glyphosate in the broccoli or cabbage? Not really. But hey, what about the cucumber? Astronomical amounts.
Really?
Hey, what about the berry? Astronomical amounts.
Oh, don't tell me berries.
Berries are notorious for pulling in glyphosate.
Wow.
Is it the same for every single pesticide? Maybe, but probably not. So it depends on what pesticide are you using, and does that plant have the machinery to pull it up? And if it doesn't, if it just stays on the outside, then you can wash it off. And if it pulls it up, you're going to be consuming large amounts of something that's going to be doing low-grade chronic inflammation. right? You're going to have to deal with it. And if you already live a lifestyle that doesn't do daily detox, backs up your liver, eventually what happens? Liver gets overburdened. Where does it spill? Spills into the blood. Blood spills into the lymph. All of a sudden, you think you have an immune issue when really you haven't cleaned out your body and your blood for God knows how long. And then you're doing immune boosters and all this immune stuff when that's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Right? And this notion of carnivore is the perfect example where we're living in the N of one, or I would say like you are the experiment that you need to be able to take as much information about and do it. What I would say is like with separate knowledge and belief. There's things you can believe in, sure, that's fine. I keep my beliefs very simple. Be kind to all creatures. Outside of that, I would like knowledge.
Yeah.
And if I share a belief, I'll be very hesitant to share beliefs, even though people love saying, "Oh, do you believe in this?" Well, I know about this. This is what I can go off of. I can speculate. I don't have to take the belief on. And so I don't have to believe in the carnivore diet. I can observe and know the fact that when someone goes on the carnivore diet, it helps the body get rid of a lot of contents. And it makes sense. It makes sense from what we know in terms of the signals and the pathways that cause our body to hold and store versus release and let go. And the idea of cleaning out the body, you got to think there's blood and there's tissues. The moment that you begin fasting, your tissues are able to now start releasing things into the blood. And if you're 20, 30 years, you've never done anything to really engage in these type of processes, your blood is going to get backed up very quick. So it can't do much more cleaning. You have to then allow it to, call it release, bring something in, bring carriers, bring support, hold the tissue off. Tissue can't be floodgates because the blood's already polluted. You can't clean your tissues with polluted blood. And you have to go through a slow process of chewing through your tissues. You mentioned autophagy, and absolutely. So within about 24 hours, autophagy will start going quite high. So within 8, within 16, it progressively goes higher. And so we know in the liver is kind of where we kind of talk about it, but it happens in every tissue at different rates. This is why if you do a 3-day fast, I would say a 3-day fast is the safe marker.
Okay.
Right. Anybody, even if you had years of problems, the 3-day fast would be, you can get there with just water. At that point in time, you should have some understanding where are you on the back end backlog of do I get to go further or do I stop now? Bring in the things to help clean up my system, and then wait a little bit and then go again. And something I think is quite funny is we will say a juice fast.
Ugh.
That's two things that don't work together.
Right.
So if you say juice, you're not fasting.
Right.
You've kicked yourself out of fasting. And so what you're saying is a juice cleanse. And those are okay, but for someone that's having a lot of issues with your liver, the type of juice you're using is absolutely super important, because your massive dose of fructose is not ideal for the liver when it's having trouble releasing a lot of contents. You're just going to burden it to an extent where you might get fatty non-alcoholic liver conditions, right? Or just fatty liver. So, this is like very small, subtle things, but for some reason I keep seeing a repetition of people going down like, no, I've done fasting all the time. I've done tons of juice fasted. And I'm like, we've lost the meaning for the word fast.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem. And I think that is, it's something that's happening, I think, across multiple fields where we've lost meaning for a lot of the language, where it's like, well, plants are trying to kill us. It's like, well, yeah, you have to know how to prepare the plant, but it's got good things in it. You know how to extract it and get use out of it. So yeah, I definitely do see the call it carnivore group as something of quite a good example to showcase, hey, look how the population is guiding the research.
Yeah.
In a very direct way. It's like, hey, you need to address this, otherwise you're going to get more and more people switching this type of lifestyle. And it took keto for way too long to go from, if you look in the literature, from this starvation molecule into like, oh no, it's just an energetic molecule.
Yep. Right.
So I don't know how much manipulation there was, right? This was before I was even born, but obviously call it the medical system, the scientific entrepreneurial system that has shifted towards very business has been going on well before I came, onto planet Earth.
Yeah, I actually did. I did the carnivore diet last January of 2024, because January is World Carnivore Month. I wanted to give it a shot because I was always like, I was the meat and potatoes, the meat and rice kind of guy, your typical, I don't want to label it bodybuilding, but that's the closest analogy that I could give. So I wanted to try something different, because I felt like kind of like what you were saying, I'm ingesting all these carbs all the time. I'm trying to achieve a certain athletic stature, but it just like every time I would eat, I'd be tired. I could be ready for a nap. So I wanted to try something different. So I did the carnivore diet last January, and it was kind of a modified carnivore because I say that because I did have berries. I had locally sourced honey and locally sourced maple syrup, which is they say can be used in the carnivore diet. But I'm gonna tell you what, like I felt phenomenal. I felt mentally sharper. I didn't have those drastic sleepiness in the middle of the day. Um, my body comp improved. Even though I was ingesting fruit, honey, and maple syrup, my overall carb intake was probably half of what I was doing before when I was eating starches. But I was able to offset some of those calories through more protein because I felt it was much easier to eat the protein on the carnivore diet than a traditional diet. And I kind of I maintained that even after January. Don't get me wrong. Like if there was a cookie or a brownie laying around on the weekend, I'm going to eat it. But overall, I felt a big difference. I was able to maintain strength. I was still able to recover somewhat well. Um, so I think I think there is something to it. Um, but I want to get into on your business side. I know that you do the blood testing and all of this other stuff. So when you're working with somebody, like what's a typical blood test that you're running and what markers are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm global, meaning I sit behind a computer and I help people connect to what's available to them in their country.
Mm-hmm.
So most of my I'd say my immortals, I have a high end program where they're in America or Mexico, and whatever is local to them, I would push them in the direction to start getting testing. They don't need it. Not every single one likes doing all that stuff. We use what's called free and available. They might buy a few gizmos or test kits, but they can bring me any data. All right, that's really the Immortal program. Is you bring me what you're interested in, what's particular for yourself, and then we're going to use that with my curated databases, my understanding of really what it means to make it to 100 if you can, and we're going to keep you on that path. Right, we put forward the information, but then it's getting you aligned with that mindset of what that means, what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that hey, I'm going to try this type of diet, that's exactly what you have to start doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you have someone there to point you into, hey, you don't want insulin spiking at this time, you'd want to avoid taking these substances, they help make sure that you're using all the information that's there to make the best decision so that when you're doing something, you don't have ideas that aren't in line with, call it, the biochemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do like having a blood panel, at least twice a year for an individual.
Sure.
If they can do 4, that's great. Your blood turns over completely in about 120 days in terms of the cells. Some of the proteins can last as long as almost a full year. Others, they'll be quite fast to turn over. So a 10x Health Systems is pretty good. That they give a good panel. Not every one of the markers is useful, but some of them are great. They're great baseline markers, no matter what part you are in your age, where I can analyze them in 3 ways. The way that's the least interesting is risk. Most people don't care about that, right? If I tell you have 40% increased risk for arthritis, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If I tell you, hey, when I take a look at all your immune markers, it looks like you're 35.
Mm.
It's a lot easier to communicate a lot of the biology in which I have in my head to you, which who cares about, call it the nitty gritty. Is it good or bad? And in what aspect? Is it immune system? Is it connective tissue? Is it my barrier? Like my liver and my skin.
Mm-hmm.
Can you present it to me in a way in which we can quantify? We can get a number,
Mm-hmm.
and we can do that. The biological age approach. So we can go risk, biological age, and not every marker you can use to peg for biological age, but there's some that are really good. And then the last one is your marker indicative of an adaptation to your physical fitness? And some of them are. So if you have a marker that's an adaptation for physical fitness, is it in the athlete zone, is in the civilian zone, where is it? And if you're constantly pushing training, but you're not able to gain that, call it proteomic adaptation, why not? Are we doing something wrong? Are we sending too many insulin signals when your call it genotype doesn't like that? It might really heavily like or be extremely sensitive to insulin signaling. You need to be heavy carnivore when you're about to do your next 3 months of training, or heavy, call it, avoiding high amounts of carbs, or you're going to eat carbs on day 3 only. You know, like it really depends on context specific.
And you can help plan all that out just based off of some testing.
We do this across a lot of work together. So
Okay.
we touch base, you know, either on a monthly basis, and, you know, across the year, we figure out what's going to work, what's their goals, and the testing helps, you know. And so to what extent are they interested in, and to what extent I act as the total solution, right? There's a mutual benefit where the more testing you get, you know, the more I have as a complete picture, also more interesting story I have. And on the other person's front is just a better bang for the buck. You know, if you're getting me to do bioanalysis, get me to do as much of it as possible. And so I offer that now at this point in time in my life, while I can still do that. And it's a limited number I can do for, call it, the full overview, the full eyesight. And to me, that's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun seeing individuals go from, you know, in a 4-year time span, from their good health into being something I would say is an absolute monster, right? They're sharp. They're not getting sleepy in the middle of the day, like you were mentioning. Their business is way better off, and their mindset has shifted to be like overall what they say is that, hey, I'm content even in the moments where I'm pissed off at someone. So that's a win I didn't know was going to come. That feels pretty good, because they feel great in their skin. They feel like their decisions are in line with what they want to do. So, you know, that's I call it the immortal program, right? Really what's immortal is the data that you leave behind.
Yep.
Because for the rest of us to be able to learn from. And genetics is a good example where, you know, the field right now in totality isn't really doing a great job to be able to leave behind something in which is usable, because it's so siloed and kind of everyone's doing small little portions. But when you take that on and say, hey, I'll get a genetics test, you know, I have the ability to sit and take all the traits I think are valuable. And so now we have your genetics with a whole boatload of traits across how you lived. Because genetics is the same when you're born and when you die. You know, you're going to be doing different things all the way throughout, right? That's why functional things like blood tests, something like lung capacity, heart rate, peak heart rate, you know, those are free. Those are the metrics you really want to use to be able to know, is what you're doing in the right direction. You know, and I do, you know, walking is enough. Like people that have made it to 100 years old, they just walk. Obviously, I don't advocate for that. You know, a certain amount of training, physical training, you can't substitute a deadlift.
Yep.
Right. So some of that, getting that in the right portion of their life is ideal, where you don't have to do it all the time.
Yeah.
But when you choose to do it, to build yourself up, to put effort in, do that across 3 to 6 months. This is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Okay, I get to coast for a little bit. Okay, am I working on my VO2 max? Do I need to, you know, address that? No, I'm good for the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll get to enjoy the benefits. And the sooner you take this on, the better. Right? If you wait, it gets harder and harder to be able to stimulate the endocrine system. Right? So there's no point of getting a guy who's in his 65s doing crazy amounts of, you know, cardio and HIIT training when he's just pushing blood through his system.
Yeah.
You must be able to get that neuroendocrine response to be able to start him in a progression system, so that you got the hormone response. All right, now you want to build out. Okay, you can start adding different things to it. But that's it in a nutshell. And obviously, I open myself up as being that middleman, so people can contact me whether they want information. Right? I do love giving talks. I do love giving seminars. I've come to gyms, leveled up what they wanted to know. You know, they wanted to know stem cell biology for the muscle. And that's, you know, that's something I'm a professor without a university. So that's also, call it, a soft spot I have to be able to just share information, because I think it's valuable for us to level up as you know, our understanding.
I agree. What are some That being said, what are some peptides that you really like?
Yeah, so two of the common ones, I think they're just safe. They're very easy. Is BPC 157 and then thymosin beta,
Mm-hmm.
and they're easily accessible.
Mm-hmm.
They're widely used. There's obviously a few others that have been. You need a little bit more understanding and guidance on how you're going to use them, but CJC and like Ipamor and Ceramorelin, they're a little bit different,
Mm-hmm.
but you can use that in a very targeted manner to help you kind of bump or level up.
Yep.
I'll be always very cautious to just say it out loud, like, hey, here's what it is, because who are you, where at what point you are in your life. Let's make sure the event of the Ferrari and the Honda Civic chassis doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And that can very easily happen when you exogenously stimulate. And so knowing how to, I can't behind a computer screen watch you train
Yeah.
and keep you accountable. And if I put you in another person's hands that doesn't understand, there's really quite the qualm. So we do need to sit, talk through it, make sure I can check in and have an understanding of where the person's at, be able to say, this is how you'd use it, this is how you must best go about it. And that's why I like the BPC 157, the thymosin beta. People have used it to regenerate from weird conditions, to avoid surgeries. And they've done it quite on their own, call it regime and schedule. And I don't see them as very, call it deleterious, even if you overshoot or don't have the perfect dosage to it.
Right.
They're not like screaming growth signals.
Right.
In that regard. And they're also quite light. You do have to do a lot of things right with
Yep.
With them in order to get the effect.
Yep.
Like they're supportive there. So if the system can't heal, they won't be the healing factor.
Yep. Yeah. I actually did them post surgery after I had my my pec repaired. I did the BPC 157 and the TB 500. I did it localized injection, so site injected.
Awesome.
I think
You'd want to, yeah.
Yeah, I think that 100% on top of my diet, moving sooner than what the doctor prescribed. Not like when I say moving, I wasn't like going in and trying to bench. It was just raising my arm. They're all like, keep that arm in a sling and stuff like that. And
water exercises or no?
No water exercises. No. It was January here in Chicago when I did it, so I didn't have access to a pool. But yeah, I think that coupled with the peptides definitely helped my healing.
Well, let me throw in a little bit something here for the healing aspect, or especially surgery. If everyone goes into it, athletes always have better outcomes at surgery than, call it, someone that's not.
Yeah.
And so there is a very fancy cell that sits around blood vessels called a mesenchymal stem cell. I don't know if anyone's heard of the MSC, but it has a lot of buzz, right?
Yep.
So really what they are is they're cells that sit around vasculature, so you call them perivascular cells. And they're very, they're not all the same. Some have high potency, some have low potency. And so when you get injured, they wake up like little satellites, like these little alien spiders, and they start dividing and they start making the scar. And then the scar you need to heal to be able to coordinate a healing response of where tissue is going to grow, bring the immune system, yada, yada. So athletes will have higher numbers of these perivascular cells. And the type of athlete will have, for example, you can just do some resistance training, specifically eccentric, and it will get higher amounts of these mesenchymal stem cells. So anybody destined to go into, underneath the knife for surgery, your best bet is to try and build up this mesenchymal pool of cells so that you have a better recovery rate. And you being, an athlete yourself, you have that. The idea of movement behind it, I would very much so support it, right? I think the doctor's often cautious because they don't know the kinesthetic, intelligence, kinesthetic capability of the individual. So, hey, we'll play the better safe than sorry kind of game. But the movement getting into it is pivotal, right? It's going to cause that mesenchymal compartment to help facilitate the regenerative response. And what's the water aspect, why I mention it, is it's very low impact.
Yes. Yeah.
And very easy range of motion.
Yeah.
So for people that are in that state, any kind of water activity is very beneficial for speeding up recovery. And the ocean water is in something particular, right? Like your body loves to absorb large amounts of magnesium from solution, and it can. So you can absorb it through your skin.
Mm.
And magnesium is another one that's like a massive driver for regenerative response. But that just me spouting out small little tidbits that who knows who's going to listen
I
to,
love it.
opportunity for me to share this. But yeah.
I love it. Daniel, thank you so much for coming on. I had a blast talking to you. I could talk to you for another 3 more hours, which I would love to have you back on maybe sometime before the end of the year so we can maybe dive in a little bit deeper on what you're doing with the business and how you're helping folks.
Bo, I'd love to. You're an absolute stud of a man.
Thank you. Are you on social media? How can anyone get a hold of you or if they want to work with you?
Yeah, for sure. Our website is timelinesciences.com.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty simple, right? We have one timeline. You use science to describe the time you're on. Time is the big factor. So if you message me through the website, you will get me directly. It's just a one-man show. You can see that a scientist made the website, and I use Twitter a little bit. I will respond to you if you message me there. Maybe not right away, but the best chance is just to shoot me an email and get in contact with me there.
Okay.
And I appreciate you, bringing forward, I think, some of the most important information to people out there. Really, their health.
Thank you. Thank you so
much. Can't really
much.
do anything and take care of anything else if your health's not in order.
I agree 100%. And I love what you're doing. And I'm a big firm believer in what you're practicing and what you're preaching. So thank you again for coming on, and I can't wait to have you on again.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Daniel.